But first, as this campaign's gone on, the sense of unreality has only deepened. The Prime Minister started his day in Tasmania announcing a $4.5 million grant to a highly successful local whisky manufacturer.
I was able to talk about the $4.5 million that we have invested in the upgrade of their distillery to ensure that they can increase their exports 10 to 20-fold. Naturo and Wesley Vale will receive just under $6 million of a total project of almost $30 million. Alcor in Bell Bay, not far from here, will receive $7.6 million of a total project of just over $15 million. And then there is Marinova in Cambridge, who will receive just under $2 million of a total project of almost $4 million to increase the production. Now that's $20 million that we're investing in the budget as part of our modern manufacturing initiative.
Since when was it the business of government to act like an ATM for private business? A Liberal one at that. It was only a couple of days ago the billionaire Twiggy Forrest, he picked up $45 million from taxpayers for a green hydro boondoggle, and now more of your money being paid to private businesses by a Liberal government today in Tasmania. And Anthony Albanese, just out of isolation but still trying to keep his head down, was spruiking what he called his plan for moving to net zero. That he said will cut power prices by around $300 a household per year by 2025, create 600,000 new jobs and attract $52 billion of investment. Now, how does that add up? In what economic universe do private businesses put in $52 billion to upgrade their systems only for prices and their revenues to fall, not rise? The reality, as revealed today by the energy regulator, is that wholesale power prices have in fact risen by almost 70% in the past 3 months on the back of higher prices for coal and gas and the planned and unplanned withdrawal of coal-fired generating capacity. The premature closure of coal-fired power in all 3 eastern states is expected to create shortfalls in generation within this decade. Now, no doubt the gap will be filled by more renewables, at least that's what they'll try and tell us, but to keep the lights on, this will require gas firming at ever-increasing prices. It's precisely what's happened in Britain and Europe. 30 years of running power systems to reduce emissions rather than produce affordable and reliable power has produced a massive dependence in Europe on gas to keep lights on and heaters on when we don't have the wind and we don't have the sun. And that's made European consumers, of course, vulnerable to price spikes, as happened earlier in the year when a sustained wind drought sent gas prices soaring. British power prices, for instance, have almost doubled in the past year and could easily double again. Heating costs alone are up 52% in the past 12 months, in a country, of course, where a heater isn't an optional extra. And all of this has made Europe more vulnerable to strategic blackmail as Russia cuts off gas in punishment for NATO support for Ukraine. That's what's happened this week in Poland and Bulgaria, and it's the threat hanging over Germany as it increases its military aid to Ukraine in response to Russia's invasion. The end result of 30 years of climate alarmism is a relatively stronger Russia, thanks to Western dependence on Russian oil and gas, and a relatively stronger China as Western heavy industry has moved to places less fastidious about emissions and where labour's cheap. Then there's the inflation that's now gripping the world economy as bottlenecks bite and prices soar, partly due to pandemic disruption, partly due to the disruption from the Ukraine war, and partly due to economic decoupling of Western countries from China. Now, strategically, that's a necessity, but it will make us less prosperous in the short term on the way to being more secure in the long term. Yeah, here we are in a federal election in Australia, and none of this is even notionally, let alone realistically, addressed in this campaign. The government campaigns on the back of daily spending announcements as if more public spending is the answer to every problem, while the opposition trumpets the supposed benefits of net zero, sheer fiscal fantasy, while the economic and security storm clouds continue to build. Meanwhile, at least in many formerly safe Liberal seats, momentum builds for these Climate 200 Green independents who have an even more warped view of the world and a little more than well-heeled, well-connected stooges for the hard left. While the bombs and the missiles rain down on Ukrainian cities and Russia threatens to break the military stalemate on nuclear weapons, these Green left ideologues insist that the only imminent apocalypse for the planet is global emissions. Who are we kidding? Not the rape and murder of civilians in Ukraine, but the temperature in a few decades hence. Has there ever been an election less grounded in real policy to deal with the world's real problems? So a hung parliament, increasingly more likely, both sides forced to negotiate then over yet more climate action, whatever the result, I fear we can expect an even more Green left Labor government or an even more Labor light coalition. No wonder, look at the polls, talk to people you know, no wonder so many voters are disillusioned.